Hello snowboarders of the internet, I am your host TC, and today I will be reviewing the Rome Katana. I rode this binding at Copper Mountain where we got about 4 inches of snow the day before. It was a dark, cold, windy day where that 4 inches pretty much blew to one side of the mountain. So you had Push Pile City over there, and then on the other side of the mountain it was pretty much bare and with even some dirt spots. So pretty variable conditions, but as you stayed to the lower portion of the mountain, it definitely got better where the top was just all blown out and just nasty. I used my Ride Fuse boots and my Jones Aviator 2.0. Binding adjustability. This is going to be one of the most adjustable bindings on the market, pretty much just like all of Rome bindings is, where there's just a lot going on here. So starting from the back, you have 2 screws, 1 on each side here. You'll loosen those guys up. Make sure you loosen this one underneath as well, and make sure you do this before you put it on the board. Otherwise, you're going to end up taking it off again, micro adjusting, all that jazz. But you'll loosen those up, and this will allow your heel cup to slide backwards and forward, just allowing you to center your boot on the binding and the board pretty much. And then working with the toes here, you do have a push pin system, so if you want to get this thing centered on top of your toe or just a little bit more centered in general, you'll push down, slide it back, and pull right back up. You can do this when it's on the board so you don't have any worries of trying to take it off again, just like with that heel cup where you don't have to micro adjust there. When we move over to the upper part of this binding here, you'll have these pivot mounts where you can actually adjust those to get more instep pressure or higher on the ankle, depending on where you like your ankle strap. I like mine a little bit higher up than pushing down on the top of my foot, so you can adjust it there. When it comes to the straps, you do have little pull tab straps that just allow it to easily micro adjust on the fly. And then same with the Highback here as well, where just a industry standard flip tab, move it, push it right back up. To go along with that, you can adjust this Highback to have canting inside or outside if you want. I don't think you need it, but you can adjust it by having 0-degree canting, 3-degree canting, or a 6-degree canting if you really want to get extreme with it. You can also adjust where this Highback sits if you want it in line with your heel side edge or just where it normally sits. I always recommend keeping it at that standard adjustment setting where you don't need it, because I mean, look at the wing on the inside here, it already cups to give you a little bit more response. When it comes to straps, they're pretty awesome actually. So they are equipped with Rome's Ox-Tec technology, where the more it stretches, the stronger it gets and the more responsive it gets. So normally with stuff, the more it stretches, the weaker it gets. Not in this case. This toe strap is gonna flex really well around pretty much any boot out there. It looks like it's gonna fit a rounded toe strap and actually it fits my square toe box extremely well. You can rock it on top or over. I went over the toe just because of how much this thing actually does stretch and mold. It worked really well. Now moving up to the ankle strap, it is gonna be a molded strap as well, so no padding there. All that padding is going to come from your boot, but it does have this molded on the outside like exoskeleton, where that will actually give it a little bit more response and a little bit more support to it, where it's not going to stretch quite as much. It's going to give you all of that response you're looking for. They do allow a bit of lateral play, but for the most part, it's going to keep you locked in and it's going to display that pressure point, or it's going to disperse those pressure points very well. The Rome Katana is going to be equipped with, I think, some of the best ratchets on the market, just like all Rome bindings are. They have very minimal play, if any at all, in them. So as you can see, this thing's barely moving, and they're super easy to grip with a mitten on. You can easily one finger take this thing right off. I will say when you do ratchet them down quite a bit, that Ox-Tec engages and really stretches. It does create a point where it just holds on, so it might feel a little bit more difficult to initially get out, but once it fully releases, it's all good to go. I didn't notice any eating away at the ladders or anything like that, but if you do, after having 60-70 days on these bindings, you can replace them. They do come with replacement parts, so they have you covered there. You don't have to go scouring the mountain for something that's going to work. Since I have you here, you might as well like, subscribe, click that bell, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of the scheduled programming we have coming out. Starting off with the response of the Highback, you will notice when you go to flex it, it actually flexes a little bit easier to the outside than it does to the inside. So what that's gonna do is that's gonna help you drive power to that inside of the board, to that edge there, and really give you a little bit more response. Now when we move over to the adjustability portion, as I mentioned before, you do have that flip tab for the forward lean, but then you also are able to cant this inside or outside depending on how you want, and there's 3 settings to that as I mentioned before. You can also rotate this Highback if you're into that sort of thing, but you know how me and Avran feel about this, where it's just a waste of time and energy really. But overall, it is going to be a responsive Highback that does want to return back to its original shape, so if you're tweaking grabs or anything like that, it's gonna allow you to do that, but it's gonna help you get that board back under your feet. When we're talking flex on the Katana, you'll notice that it's gonna allow you to flex to the outside more than towards the middle of the board there, just because you have an Asym wrap where there's really nothing holding you in over here, and this Highback naturally wants to flex to that side as well. It will allow the board to flex nice and freely underneath your foot just because of how much foam is under here. It doesn't create any pressure points or any flex points to really snap that board if you land a little tail or nose heavy on it. For the most part though, this binding does want to flex to the outside of the board rather than to the inside. It's going to drive more power inside while allowing that flex to the outside. When you're actually riding these bindings, they do feel extremely damp where you barely notice that corduroy that you're going over, but you also really don't notice any of the chop and chunder and like that icy stuff either, just because of how much foam is underneath your foot and all that foam that you're standing on top of with the footbed there. It does create a nice, smooth, comfortable ride. Rider in mind, this binding is made for that all mountain freestyle guy that just wants pretty much as much binding adjustability as they can have there, where they could just get it perfectly centered, set it, and forget it. If you want to support us further, head on over to Angry Snowboarder VIP. Sure, I could explain it here, but we have a great video over there getting into it really in depth. I really did enjoy this binding. It was nice and damp and pretty much responsive where I wanted it. It still allowed me to really butter on the nose and tail of the board, but I felt locked in where I could shift that knee into the middle of the board and really drive those turns and use this binding to power. It was super comfortable. I get why Avran really likes Rome bindings. There are still a lot of moving parts for me, but as long as you keep them tight, it shouldn't be a problem. Overall, super solid binding. It's definitely that charger binding for sure that you just want to go fast and take a little bit more chances with. Comparable bindings, the Bataleon Astro Asym, the Jones Mercury, and the Ride C8. This has been my review of the Rome Katana. If there are too many moving parts on this for you, why don't you go check out one of the reviews we have for the comparable bindings.